The Adult Ballet Studio is a podcast featuring conversations with the empowering voices of the adult ballet community, a world where passion has no limits and dreams can take flight. My name's Elizabeth Blossfield, and I'm an adult ballet dancer and your host. Welcome to the studio. Happy Tuesday, everybody, and welcome to the Adult Ballet Studio. The guest we have in the studio today was so inspiring to talk to. I was listening back to our interview as I was editing it, and I couldn't stop smiling. He was so kind and shared so much great advice about mental health and being an artist that extends even beyond ballet. I can't wait for you to hear from him. Aubrey Lynch II is the Dean of Students and the Director of ABT Wellness and RISE with American Ballet Theatre in New York City. He focuses on mentoring students at the school and providing resources for them, as well as expanding access to mental health resources that support the whole dancer in and out of the studio. He also works to build upon ABT's diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives to make ballet a more welcoming place on stage, in the audience, and behind the scenes. Prior to joining American Ballet Theatre, Aubrey was the dance director and chief education and creative programs officer at the Harlem School of the Arts. He was a professional dancer before moving over to arts administration, and he was one of the last dancers hand-selected by Alvin Ailey to join the company before he died, which means Aubrey had a chance to not only dance with Alvin Ailey American Dance Theatre, but also be mentored by an absolute legend. He shares in this interview the best advice he received from Alvin Ailey, and it's so good. Aubrey was also an original company member of Complexions Contemporary Ballet, and he was, I'm so excited about this, an original cast member of the Tony Award-winning Broadway musical Disney's The Lion King. This was the first show I ever saw on Broadway. Aubrey acted as the production's associate choreographer and later the associate producer. I tried not to geek out so much about that, but I don't know if I succeeded. Prior to all of that, Aubrey studied chemistry at the University of Michigan, and he says that connected to his ballet career too. Aubrey and I had so much to talk about. He was such a pleasure to talk to. So let's just get to the interview. Check it out. Aubrey, how are you doing?
Good morning. This is I'm kind of celebrating since my first official interview since I got to ABT.
Oh my gosh, I'm so honored that you did it on this podcast. That's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. I'm really happy and happy to speak to you. I love what you're doing, and I think that the work we do in the world is important. I love talking about it.
Yeah, well, me too. And I'm really glad that you're here because I love the work that you're doing at ABT, and I can't wait to dig into some of it. Just for anybody who isn't familiar with your background or the work that you do at ABT, could you just give sort of a brief overview? I know that you're the Dean of Students and the Director of ABT RISE and ABT Wellness.
Yep, I'm the dean, which means that I am responsible for all of the student life, their dorm, their visas, anything that happens outside of the dance studio is my responsibility, along with the student life coordinator, Lauren Wood, who's amazing. And so we run around after teenagers and make sure they're where they're supposed to be, have what they need, from auditioning for audition material for companies and other projects to missing passports and meal plans and
the whole gamut.
Dorm rooms and conflict between students. All of it. We're basically surrogate parents, and we're in partnership with parents to make sure that their lives are that they are in a place where they can do what they do, which is learn ballet, and ultimately learn to be people. And as the Director of Wellness and ABT RISE, I am working with Kara Simmons, our Director of People, on our DEI initiatives and making sure that the company is in a space that is healthy mentally, spiritually, physically, and that we are inclusive and as diverse as we can be.
Well, this is really exciting for me to talk to you because I love the work that ABT is doing and that you're doing with ABT to sort of support the whole dancer. As you said, you teach the students to be people as well as dancers, which is so important, and at ABT RISE. And I know that initiative sort of started in 2013 as Project Plie and has kind of evolved since then. So could you talk about how the RISE program sort of came about, what the inspiration was to sort of build upon Project Plie?
Sure, it's had many, many incarnations. I work closely with Dennis Walters. He's the managing director of the school. And I guess about in 2012, when Project Plie launched, I was the director of dance at the Harlem School of the Arts. And we created a partnership with ABT and became one of the first schools that had all of its teachers AB certified with the ABT National Training Curriculum. And their goal was, of course, diversify ballet. So they've been trying to get kids of color and kids that might not have access to ballet to ABT to experience ballet and learn to do what they do. And over the last 10 to 12 years, it's kind of evolved into a more company-wide initiative for all of our DEI experts. It went from being a class of students that would visit ABT and take class once a week and perform with their students in their recital, to weekends of recruiting young third graders and fourth graders to experience ballet. Richard Toda is the director of engagement. He is all over the city and spreading the beauty of ballet and working with kids and getting them to come to ABT and experience us. So it's really powerful to have been part of a company that has had diversity as part of their initiative many years before it was trendy, way before George Floyd. And it's really incredible that I landed 10 years later in a position that is actually doing this work in the company. And it's just really an honor that I cannot put words to. Sometimes I go, I'm really here. I'm here doing this work. It's incredible.
That's amazing. Yeah, you are, and you're doing great work. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And I know that RISE stands for Representation and Inclusion, Sustained Excellence. And I love that as sort of its motto. Can you talk about why representation and inclusion are essential in sort of sustaining ballet as an art form? Because I know, as you mentioned, ABT has sort of been ahead of the curve on this, and how you're continuing to contribute to those changes in ballet.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's funny as I'm actually talking to all departments about what DEI means to ABT. In my role with working with Kira Simmons and their DEI initiatives, we often want to do sensitivity training to train us to kind of be aware of what the trends are, the languages we should be using, how to be as inclusive as we can be. And I found that there's not a lot of stuff out there for ballet. So I thought, what if I speak to all the departments and get from their perspective what DEI means for a ballet company and a ballet school. And it's really powerful in speaking with these specialists, marketing, development, or company management, and their real desire to make ballet accessible, to really live our mission, and to spread it as far and wide as it can to let everyone know that ballet is not some shining place way far away. It's here for everyone. It's a powerful technique. It teaches discipline and etiquette, self-respect, self-love, competition, all things we need to be better people. And it's important because we're America's ballet company, right? And we should embody it inside and out, not just with the color, race, or gender of dancers, but our different kinds of thinking, our perspectives, our cultures, our family backgrounds, how we problem solve, how we work together. All of the things that make us human and make us America have a place in ballet. And I love that we have a very diverse set of dancers in the company now. And we have a lot of female choreographers. We have Susan Jaffe is an incredible force and a representation of what beauty and ballet and elegance and inclusivity are. And I think we're on our way. I think we really are ahead of the curve.
And that's what I hope that ballet can sort of expand as an art form and be much more inclusive. And I love that you're sort of approaching this from all angles at ABT.
Yes.
And you mentioned all of the different things that ballet can teach us, not just the physicality of dancing, but the mental aspects and social aspects, going out into the world and doing all kinds of things beyond ballet. But as you mentioned, there are some problematic elements of ballet's history. It can feel very exclusive and there can be some barriers to entry. So can you talk a little bit more about how you're hoping to sort of honor ballet's beautiful history while moving away from some of the problematic elements and pushing the art form forward?
Well, it's interesting because I was just talking about this with the artistic team, and this is really actually an artistic question for them. And so I'm not going to speak on their behalf, but I have challenged the company to let's be the first to say it wasn't cool. Right? It was very exclusive. It comes from the King's Court, which was very white Anglo-Saxon and very classist. It was very hierarchical, and people were excluded to the degree that tights are and shoes are pink because they were made for white skin. And the moment you add other colors of skin onto the stage, you're literally changing the picture of ballet. You're changing the technique. You have to think about the lighting and the costumes and the set design, the set colors, and the wigs and the makeup. All these things come into play to welcome all people to the stage. And so that when the audience sees a ballet, they're seeing themselves and not just some glossy picture of how things used to be. And thankfully, I work with people that really are passionate about that. And they are looking for ways to make sure the stage picture looks like America. And we're living and embodying it. I do think we have to face up America, right, has to have that reconciliation. And whenever I hear, and I'm going to get political for a second here, my personal opinion, but whenever I hear this war on woke culture, it's like a dagger in my heart because I don't have the luxury of being woke, right? I want you all to wake up that I'm here, right?
Right.
And whenever someone says there's a war on woke culture, you're saying there's a war on seeing women and the power they have and having equal pay, seeing varying religions, seeing economic status, seeing other cultures that you're saying don't see them because they're still not welcome. So let's put the woke word aside because I have people that say they don't even know what it means. And what I'm saying at ABT and everywhere that I go is that DEI, wokeness, is about kindness. It's about belonging. It's about respect and giving others the benefit of the doubt and assuming that what you bring to the table is valuable. And you assume that what I'm bringing to the table is valuable. We might not agree, but I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt that we can actually get there together. Curiosity, empathy, and love. If you just every day purposefully said, I'm going to be kind, I'm going to receive kindness, right? I'm going to make everyone around me feel like they belong, that we're on this tribe and this team together, inspired together, right? I want everyone to feel that I respect them and that I'm going to give them permission to fail in front of me and be there for them if they stumble. If we did that, woke, DEI, checking boxes, hiring this, hiring that, it just goes away. And it's such a simple thing. And I want to believe that we all want that, which is why I am very passionate about this work. And I know that I work with people that want the same thing. I know that the dancers in the company want that kind of love and respect and have that for each other and for the audience. And we as leaders of the industry have to embody that. And it's hard because it can be very alone to stand there and be kind when evil is talking back to you, which is why I'm so concerned about these young people. And they're in a world where they're flicking through Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, and they're seeing these horrible messages, things that people are saying, the lies and the evil and the hate, right? And how do you navigate that? It's hard enough being a ballet dancer. It's hard enough getting to class and defying gravity and making these shapes that are impossible and daring to think you can be perfect and strive for perfection. And then you're hearing someone say that you don't belong or that you are less than, you are marginalized, or God forbid, that all the colors of America are actually equal and have equal strength and equal love. You know, it's just really, really a scary time. And I want to believe that that's just what sells. That's just what people are clicking on. That's just making money. That the vast majority of us want to get on with their lives and be kind and share love. And there is no greater way to do that than with ballet.
That's so true. And I think you make some good points because I think you're right. The vast majority of people are good. And it's scary times we're living through right now. But I think you're right. We tend to get into these, screaming matches at each other, especially on social media. And that's not how you get things done. You get things done, as you mentioned, with love, empathy, curiosity, asking questions, starting conversations. So
and create a friction, right? We are not going to always agree, but that's where creativity comes out. That's where innovation comes out, is where two opposing ideas come together and something in the middle that no one thought of evolves and becomes something incredible. That's how it's always happened. And it's just incredible that we've gone so far back in our thinking, which is why I really push emotional intelligence. Right? Our lives are really impacted by a lack of self-awareness. I think if people realize the impact they made on others in a negative way sometimes, realize the impact they had on each other, they would stop. But life gets so busy, we haven't taken the time to stop and self-reflect. What am I doing to contribute to the drama before me, right? What am I doing to contribute to the drama of my life? What am I doing to make it easier for someone else? If we stop and ask that question, we can actually do things every day to make life better for everybody. and for ourselves. And in doing it for others, it comes back to us.
What goes around comes around. That's so true. And I'm glad you talked about that, because my next question was about self-reflection. I know you have a big focus on that. And I want to go back to something you mentioned in your last answer, because you said there's no better way to start all of this than with ballet. Could you unpack that a little bit and how you see ballet as an art form kind of starting these conversations or getting people through the door to self-reflect and be curious?
Yeah, I think when you put a child in a ballet class, any dance class for that matter, any arts class, right? Singing, dancing, acting, visual arts, but particularly ballet because of the discipline, right? And the self-confidence you need to stand there and have the audacity to think you can actually make these shapes, right? And when you're a child, you don't know any better. You don't know how crazy you look and how uncoordinated you might be, just in the space of love and imagination. And, ballet tells stories that we keep going back to, Romeo and Juliet and Swan Lake and Sleeping Beauty and these fairy tales that have deep meaning for us. And if we are in a space where it's safe to fail, it's safe to be your authentic self, it's to have an instructor that shows you love and kindness, that shows you how to stand like an important person, how to strive for ideals, how to respect your classmates, how to use your peripheral vision, how to have musicality. There's so many parts of this that make us better people. And when we are in this space of creativity, we're better at homework, better at problem solving, because the muscles of creativity are like physical muscles. You've got to use them and practice with them and strengthen them. Otherwise, they atrophy. And to start this at young ages with kids is one of the best ways to be on the road to fulfillment and to getting to know yourself. Now, people might argue sports to that. Of course they do, or other, academics. All of those things are important. But for me, and maybe I'm biased towards ballet because I began in ballet, that standing in a dance studio is the most beautiful way to be centered and to find your humanity. My opinion.
Yeah. That's my opinion too. I agree with you. And I love the idea that, you're in a ballet class and you're thinking, why do we have the audacity to make these shapes? That's going to make me laugh.
We do. How dare we think we can get a leg up here, point that foot, do those turns, do the turn, and then we do it.
Yeah, we do it.
Ask a child to step up, they will do it, right? And it's nothing greater than having an aspiration of something as beautiful and powerful as a perfect arabesque, a perfect turn, a perfect jump, a perfect leap. It's really powerful. And what I really hope happens in the world is that we are not shamed when we can't do it, right? There's this ballet and symphony and orchestra, and everyone is down here. And it's a circle. The arts go in a circle, and the human being is the point of it. Whether it's ballet or whether it's modern dance or some other sport, it's about engaging a child, engaging someone's skill set. So I wanted to kind of reassess how classist, right, we can be, hierarchical we can be. How do we honor that technique that was built on a hierarchy and make everyone feel welcome? That's a tricky balance, right? And how do we, a lot of people quit ballet because they can't do the shapes and their bodies won't do this and the other. And that's a myth, right? We're not all going to be tall, long, with huge, long legs, limbs, and bendy feet. We're not going to all have that, but we also deserve the right. It's our birthright to dance. We all deserve the right to be in a dance studio and strive for an arabesque as your body can do it, and embrace the shapes that you create that are a reflection of this ideal ballet aesthetic, which will change. Choreographer will come along and flip it on his head and do something different in time, the same way that Sylvia Guillaume turned it around and became the aesthetic it is today. Someone will do that again. But in the meantime, we got to make sure that our young people understand that ballet is for everybody. Right? Yeah. It's for everyone. And you are not less than because your feet don't point like someone else's, or your legs are not as flexible, or you're not as tall, or not as able as someone else. You are doing your version as your body was meant to do it.
And that's such an important message for dancers to hear. We don't hear it enough, dancing the way that your body is meant to dance. And I think a lot of dancers struggle with those doubts. And I'm curious, I know that a lot of your work focuses on mentorship, obviously as the Dean of Students at ABT, but even outside of that, you've done a lot of mentorship. So what have you found works well in sort of building that welcoming, inclusive environment in a ballet school? Or what would you say to instructors who are looking to, make sure that their students understand ballet is for them?
Well, I think dancers, people in general, want to be seen, but dancers in particular, because our whole industry is built on feedback. You're looking in the mirror all day long, you're trying to create these shapes, and the teacher telling you to do this and do that, and you're actually talking about how you stand, how you move, what you look like, how you feel about yourself. So it's important to your tone your body language, and finding things about these students to celebrate every day and teach them in your celebration of them for them to celebrate themselves, whatever they're bringing to the table. It's a journey. There's no point of destination. I'm sure you speak to any prima ballerina, they will say they never got to that pinnacle point that they really wanted to get to, because every time you reach your goal, the goal changes and more into the future. That's the artistry. So for teachers to make sure that, ask themselves, as a teacher, do you believe that every child is teachable? Do you believe that students that don't have the same kind of facility as others belong in the room with you? Do you believe that do you know yourself well enough to make sure that you're not practicing on your unconscious bias to students? It's a tricky thing, right? Teaching is a gift, and educators know this. Teach what you know in a way that's going to bring out the best in them, not necessarily what you think is best for them, because what we think is best for them might not be what's best for them. And that's the hard part about being mentor is you point the way and get out of the way and leave the rest to the student and trust them that they've been given the information that they give. So I think making sure that your children, your students feel seen and heard and know that they are worthy of any dream they have in their minds if they put their mind to it.
That's a really important message. And I know you've done a lot of great work with kids and also adults as well. So kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum for adults who are either, starting ballet or returning to it after a break. I know there can be some fear or anxiety about stepping back into the studio. So what would
me? I gotta get back in class again.
Yeah, exactly. What would you say to them? What would be your advice for adults who are kind of working through those mental challenges as well?
Turn off your negative voices. Just shut it off. Go in there and look a mess, right? Enjoy the mess. You're not gonna learn these things right away. You may never learn to do a perfect arabesque, but you deserve the right to try and to forgive yourself, to be in a state of a beginner's mind. When you're a child, what is that space that we're in? It's called unconscious incompetence. We have no idea we look a mess, right? And then there's a conscious incompetence. You look a mess. And then there's conscious competence. I know I can do this. And then there's unconscious competence. You're so good, you don't know you're doing it. You want to be in that space of the first one. It's okay to be, or the second one, to be in a state of unconscious incompetence. That's why you're there to learn. And the more you challenge yourself, the more you're willing to fail, the more resilient you become, the more self-aware you become, the more self-loving you become, and the more loving you become to others. If you give yourself permission to turn off those voices as in my podcast says, anxiety lies. These voices lie to us all the time and tell us stories that are not true. Turn them off and just be you. Be your authentic, beautiful self. Move with the music and the other people in the room. And trust me, they're not looking at you. They're looking at themselves, right? We all think we go to the gym, go to class, they're looking at us. They don't care about us. We're not that important, right? So just be you and celebrate you and enjoy the love and beauty of whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's ballet or rock climbing or pottery. Do something that inspires you, that reminds us that we're alive and we belong and we should be here. We have the right to be here.
That's such great advice. And I've never heard it broken down like that before. I love that idea of unconscious incompetence. That's a really great way to put it. And I love the way that you talk about mental health because, you give such great advice and such actionable steps that people can take, when they're working through some of that stuff in ballet, but you don't sugarcoat anything. You're very, real and honest. So how did you get to that space yourself? How did you get so comfortable, being yourself and just get to such a good mental health space where you feel like you can share that with others?
Well, I appreciate that. I'm not quite sure I'm in a good mental space all the time, right?
It seems
I'm
like
transparent about the fact that I am in my conscious incompetence, managing my life and my triggers. I've just been a very curious person. I wanted to know, why was I so scared to dance sometimes? Why was I so nervous backstage? Why was I that take my notes so personally? I mean, when I was dancing with Alvin Ailey and traveling the world in this incredible dance company, I don't think I was having a lot of fun sometimes because I was so worried about being perfect, so worried about what the director thought, what Judy Jamison thought about my dancing. And turns out, she liked my dancing, but I never knew that because I was so busy worried about what she was thinking. I missed my whole career, worried about what others thought about myself and being scared sometimes. I challenged that. And I think what brought me into the space of where I am now was I wanted to understand, why do I get triggered? Why do I want to pop off on someone and not listen? How can I be a better listener? How can I make people feel loved? How can I make people avoid what I went through? So, as a short answer, it was my own mental health journey that has made me more aware that my life would have been much more fun if I had been aware that I wasn't crazy. I just had an anxiety disorder. It meant that the anxiety line was louder than most people, and it wasn't normal. Thankfully, it wasn't debilitating, but it was certainly not as fun. So what I tell the students all the time is I'd like to present you tools so maybe you can avoid a little bit of this. A lot of our mental health journeys and our journey towards a higher level of emotional intelligence is a lifetime of an arc where there's no point of arrival. You're in a state of learning all the time. And the kind of things you might tell a student whose brains are literally still growing, they're not going to get it right away. When you start talking about perfectionism or anxiety, depression, or conflict resolution, healthy self-talk, but at some point, they remember they heard it before. And they might not remember where they heard it from or where it came from, but they're going to stand taller and feel better about themselves and know that they're not alone and at a critical moment. And I may not be there to see that, but I won't be there to see it. And they won't know it came from us at ABT or from their parents or from their teachers, but they'll be in a space where they'll be healthier, stronger, and more self-aware. So as a long answer, my journey of self-awareness is because I face some challenges with my mental health and dealing with ADHD or depression, anxiety, a little bit of OCD, perfectionism. And I have an issue, night terror, where I wake up and I will see horror things and scream and have really theatrical moments, my entire life, And so
Yeah.
I had to deal with, the ritual of sleep has become a whole thing every single night. When I was younger, sleep was a mountain to climb. It was a horrifying time. I would get, chills. I'd be afraid to turn the lights off. And as an adult now, I've learned to manage that. And by that journey of getting to a place where I know that I'm not crazy, I just have some things going on in my head that I have to manage. And I've become very good at it and a very highly functioning person. And I think that we can all do this in our lives, at whatever level, whether we have a mental issue or not, that we have a responsibility to those around us to be aware how we impact the room, to be aware when we're throwing our pain on someone else, to be aware when we've stopped listening and made someone else the other. And it's hard to go, you know what? My bad. I'm sorry. I was not appropriate. I said something I didn't mean. And it takes a lot of courage. And you have to, first of all, be able to look at yourself and say, oh, I guess that was my fault. And I am sorry. And I want to live in that world where it's safe to fail. One person at a time, I'm hoping to change the world.
You're planting seeds, which is so important. As you said, you might not see, the outcome. It's, a lifelong journey, but you're planting those seeds. And, thank you for sharing that as well. Cause I think that's something a lot of dancers struggle with, those struggles around anxiety, perfectionism. I get those night terrors too. They're horrifying. So
Oh,
I do.
yeah.
Yeah, they're the worst. Thank you for sharing how you sort of learned how to manage all of that and to turn it into, your artistry and your ability to have an impact on others. I think that's so important.
Yeah, you
And
said something that just kind of that just wanted to jump in there is that it is the gift of these issues, whatever your challenges are, is if you can put them into the dance, right? Put your anxiety, your fears, your concerns into the art form and you move, and dance becomes a therapeutic experience. And the deeper and more authentic you go in your exploration of these emotions within yourself, the more the audience will connect with you. The most personal is the most universal, and the more we can connect with ourselves as artists, as performers, and they're on stage or off stage. People see themselves in you, and they are in turn healed. So it's our greatest wounds, are our greatest gifts, and they are scars of wisdom if we know where to point them.
that's so important. Yeah, that's so true. And that's why art, any kind of art, is such a powerful art form. And I think especially, dance and the performing arts, because it's happening, right here and now, right in front of you. And that makes you feel like you can connect with the people on stage on a very human level. And I know you mentioned your time at Alvin Ailey. I want to kind of talk a little bit more about you and your background with dance as well, because I know you mentioned you started with ballet at a young age. So
Yeah.
what was your first introduction to ballet, or how did you first become interested in it?
Well, actually, one of my best friends in high school, Carol Soma, we entered this dance contest, and I had never danced before, and we won. And so, to make a long story short, I wanted to I became the first male cheerleader in my school because my cousin was a pom-pom girl. I wanted to dance like she did. Her name was Tandri. I learned to dance in her. We learned this dance in her living room. And after, like maybe I'll have a story, right? And then so one of the cheerleaders invited me to a ballet school. So I went, and thankfully, this ballet school had two dancers that danced professionally in Europe, and everyone in their school, they were pointing towards a profession. At the time, I had no idea you could make a living doing a dance. I had no idea you could be paid to dance. I was just dancing for fun. And so I graduated top 10 of my class. I was a chemistry major. My father said, there's not enough Black people in the sciences. You're going to be a scientist. Okay, Dad, I'm going to be a scientist. So I went to U of M as a chemistry major, and Alvin Ailey came to Detroit, and I took a master class. And I thought, oh my God, I'm home, right? I was taking ballet at a dance studio in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I think that little bit of ballet technique I had made me a very supple for the Horton technique that was based on Alvin Ailey. And I was offered a scholarship. And so I had to choose between chemistry and dance. And I chose dance against my parents' wishes. They had, of course, a cow and a goat and a pig and cried and screamed. But thankfully, they didn't stop me. I came to New York City. I had the hardest summer of my life. I came from a very small town, but dirt was and chickens. And I was in New York City with trains and buses and muggers and crime in the 1980s. It was a very different place it is now. And somehow I became the last dancer that Alvin Ailey chose before he died, and traveled the world with Alvin Ailey. And then left the company to do film and television. And I wanted to become an actor, come on Broadway. And then I booked this little show called The Lion King. Who knew that it would become the phenomenon? And so I became the dance captain, the person in charge of the choreography. And then they promoted me to being the associate choreographer, where I could actually hire dancers. And then made me the associate producer. And I taught the show all over the world, 14 productions. And all of the casting, all of the creative aspects of the show was my responsibility for 10 years. And I had the time of my life, and I learned so much about people and cultures. I was in over 30 countries and living in each one for a while to help set up The Lion King. We had The Lion King translated into many different languages. It was really a true adventure, a hero's journey. And then as fate would have it, in the financial crisis of 2008, I was let go. I was laid off. So I had this huge pinnacle of an art, and then nothing. And because my whole identity was wrapped up in, I was literally the Lion King king. Right? I went from Alvin Ailey to Lion King. I was living large. And then I had to look in the mirror and go, well, who am I? Who am I without Alvin Ailey? Who am I without the Lion King? And I had a real crisis. And for 2 years or so, I went through a deep depression and had to figure out who I was. And that's another reason why I'm very passionate about this now, because if I hadn't had the tools and wasn't curious about myself at the time, it could have been really bad. But I knew that it was temporary. I was going to come through this. I had done this. I've been Alvin Ailey Lion King. I did it twice in my life. I could do it again. And I found myself at the Harlem School of the Arts with little kids teaching dance, theater, visual arts, and music. And those kids saved my life. Right? Those little kids, and they're seeing me and making me feel beautiful and powerful, just for being in the room with them, really healed me. And that's when I fell in love with arts education and really began to use my curiosity about mental health and all of the tools I learned in my therapy and my journey through my night terrors and the termination from Disney, all the things I went through, in a real purposeful way in dance classes. And so now you fast forward another 10 years, and now I'm at American Ballet Theatre. Those tools I use in those dance classes, I now use the ballet dance. I'm not teaching them ballet. I'm not teaching them dance, but I go into the room and create these workshops that introduce the idea of perfectionism or depression or anxiety through ballet and through the stories of ballet and ballet characters. And we have these conversations and activities around these tenets of emotional intelligence, and they're not even aware they were having the conversation. And then you go, by the way, that's anxiety. Or by the way, that's perfectionism. Or by the way, that's this. And so they're in this space of creativity, exploring these ideas that I know ultimately will fortify them further along in their career and in their lives as people. So it's been quite a journey. I guess it's not over.
Yeah,
bring it on.
That's an amazing story.
Another chapter.
Another chapter.
Season finale on the way.
So good. No, there's so much that I love about that story. I love that you first came to Alvin Ailey and you thought I'm home. And then you had this incredible career. You still, you're still having an incredible career, but you went through, a rough patch during 2008. And then it was dance that ultimately saved you and pulled you out of
Yes.
it as well,
Yes.
which is such an inspiring
Yes.
story. And I know, I've had a lot of conversations on this podcast with professional dancers who went through something similar, whether it was due to, an injury or whatever it was, where you sort of have this identity crisis of, who am I without dance or without this job? And yeah, thank you for sharing how you pushed through that because I think it resonates with a lot of dancers.
Yeah, to all dancers, no matter who you are, you're going to come to that moment where you might have to try something else. And the challenge is to be good, to be at the level of a top ballet dancer, modern dancer, or performer of any kind. Your life is dedicated to it. There's not a lot of time to explore other interests or to hone other skills. My biggest advice to dancers is to always have your ear open to the other things that you like and to not be afraid to train along the way. To class here, workshop here, workshop there, so that when you decide to make a transition, you have interest and tools and pathways available to you. If you wait to the moment and go, okay, I just finished my world tour, 20 years at XYZ Ballet Company, now what? That's scary. It's really scary. And you're not wrong because you had to be dedicated to be that good. But I just urge everyone to keep your lens wide for your interests. And it may come down to just watch line designers, watch the costume people, watch the crew. There are all kinds of other jobs back there that dancers can do. And our skills are transferable. And like yourself, which is you seem to have found your lane, which is beautiful. It's a great feeling, isn't it?
It's a great feeling. Yeah, it took me so long.
Good.
I remember ever since, I was a little kid, I wanted to have a career in ballet, but I knew that I wasn't, training at the level where I would be a professional dancer. And to be able to have finally found a place within ballet where I still get to engage with it every day,
Oh, it's
it's
great.
so
Yeah, congrats.
meaningful. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, thank you.
congratulations. Yeah, for real. For real.
Thank you. Well, congrats to you too. You've done so much. And I have so many questions from that story you
Sure.
told about kind of your journey with dance, but I wanted to
Yeah.
just touch on something that excites me so much because you mentioned you were part of the original Broadway cast of The Lion King.
Oh, yeah.
That was actually my first Broadway show that I ever saw when I was 14 on my first trip to New York. It's amazing. So you went into it a little bit, but what was that experience like for you? Anything you can share, I'm all ears because I love that show so much.
Yeah, it's really when I think back of my very first fitting. I remember when I went to the audition, I saw in the paper Disney Lion King. I was imagining these jumping teddy bears, kind of like a theme park show. That's what I
Yeah.
really thought. And I walked in and I saw these watercolor images of what the costumes would look like. I thought, oh, this is going to be different. And my first fitting, I had this gazelle. In fact, that's a gazelle right there.
Oh,
I had
I was
this
going to ask
gazelle,
about that.
right? Yeah, that's actually not the one that I carry, but that's a gazelle from the Broadway show. That was my going away party. I mean going away gift. I was
That's
like,
amazing.
what do I do with that? It's a gazelle. So it
I
sat
love
in
it.
storage for 15 years. And I
Oh,
thought, oh, and the paintings underneath there, those are the sketches that Julie Taymor did for the costume concepts. And I thought,
wow.
you know what? Just like a mantle and a big, moose head on someone's fireplace, what if I put my gazelle up there? Voila!
I love it. It's
So
perfect.
it's a reminder of what I've been through because
Yes.
when you wore it the very first time, it was heavy and clunky, and I had three of them, and Garth Figure was jumping, be like a gazelle, and what does that mean? And week after week, and trying on all of the puppets and the getting them to fit properly so that you could see and that your backs would be okay, and the stage was not sprung, it was steel on concrete and plywood, is what the original stage was. And it was
Wow.
mechanical, things moving around. And the lighting, they were creating software to run the lights for this thing. The tech rehearsal for the Circle of Light was 3 days.
Oh
Three
my,
minutes was the first 3 days in the theater was running that Circle of Life. The elephant has to come into the stage and swing the trunk on Circle of Life. And if it wasn't there, Julie would stop, go back and do it again. I sat in that warthog for another 3 days during Can't Wait to Be King. I mean, it was a lot.
yeah.
And of course, we didn't know it was going to be the Lion King. We thought, what is this? What's happening here? But what saved this was that everybody involved was an artist. There were people from Dance of Harlem, from Alvin Ailey, from other Broadway shows. There were designers from these top tier designers, genius. And everybody was united around one vision. And what a metaphor for life, right? We all believed in the vision of Julie Taymor. As cuckoo and crazy as it was at sometimes, we believed in it. And we every day strove, gave our best selves to make these things happen. We had these hyena heads where in the middle of the dance you had these hoodies and a hyena head, had to take off the hat, parachute clips, and throw it at Scar and come out of the thing and tie it around your waist and do the dance and craziness. A lot of this was cut, but we tried all kinds of fun, artistic, and difficult things. And at the end of that 11-week process, we had The Lion King. And then the very first preview was sold out. The second preview, no one came because it wasn't really advertised. No one knew what it was. And then word of mouth spread. We came back to New York City, and then Rosie O'Donnell had us on her show. And she said, if you don't get your tickets right away, you're not going to get any. And it sold out, and it's been sold out ever since, almost 30 years later. Yeah. It's really a blessing to have been a part of that process from the beginning. The beauty of The Lion King is that the audience having this out-of-body experience. But backstage, where the real show is, you're changing costumes. I changed costumes 19 times when I was in the show the very first time.
19 times?
That's 19 times, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then as I restaged the show all over the world, I made it easier and made the tracks of these performers easier to do. Because at the time, wherever you stood became the choreography. Whatever you did became the costume change. So they would give things to people that could do things well. And I think it's a compliment that they gave me all those things to do, but that wasn't sustainable in 8 shows a week and for one person. So I took the time to restage the entire show. I actually wrote a book. It's called The Dance Captain Bible, where every single step, bend the left elbow, bend the right elbow, plie on the left leg, flex the foot behind you on count 1. Switch feet, count 2. And I typed it up. Every dancer, every singer, every role. It took me 2 years to get through the whole thing. But now I was really proud when the pandemic came to an end and they had to reopen The Lion King. They opened up that book. And the bottom right corner, it says, written by Aubrey Lynch in 1996. And I'm really proud of that. You know,
yeah, you should be.
that writing down all the choreography, and that was a concert dancer in me. I just wanted to make sure that the choreography that I was seeing in the room back then was remembered. And thankfully, to this day, you can look until you can see the exact same thing it was 24 years ago. It's fun.
That's incredible. Congratulations. Yeah, those seeds that you're planting, that's a testament to that. That's incredible.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. It was really something. I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, you definitely should be. And I always say, Broadway dancers, actors, they're like Olympic athletes. I mean, doing 8 shows a week is so intense. And that story is a testament to that. I mean, I can't believe 19 costume changes. I mean, everything that you're doing blows my mind.
It was a blur. It was a blur back there. I mean, I was the last hyena off in the confrontation and the first gazelle back on for the final finale number we call the final busa. And I never forget, strip it all off and put it on. They're literally painting my face as I'm going onto the stage.
Wow.
That was something. And then, of course, what was really great is in 2017, for the 20th anniversary, they invited me back to help refresh the choreography. So Garth Fagan and I choreographed 3 different scenes in the show. So now the choreography on stage is partly mine. Isn't that fun?
Wow. So cool. I'm going to have to go check it out again. It's been a long time since I've seen it.
Now. Yeah. You won't see the difference so much unless you really are an old, you know the old choreography. But yeah, Garth Fagan was very generous. He's one of the most important mentors of my life and allowed me to do that with him and share that glory as a Tony Award-winning choreographer and a Black pioneer in avant-garde movement. And I was his little protege, and I'm really, really proud of that too. So I'm grateful. I'm blessed. I can't complain. I complain all the time, but I try not to take my complaints too seriously because I have a very blessed life. And if it was all over tomorrow, God forbid, I've had my share. I've got a lot more to do, a lot more to give, a lot more to experience, but I don't be greedy. I have had a wonderful, wonderful life.
Yeah, you've done so much and had such an incredible career. It's so awesome to hear some of these stories. And I know that you also mentioned you have a podcast as well. You have a series on YouTube called In Reflection. And you sort of act as a mentor to anyone watching your videos and listening to your podcast to address topics like, perfectionism, resilience. Why did you decide to start that? And how do you hope to contribute to some of the self-reflection that you're hoping to inspire in ballet and the broader performing arts world?
It's mentorship. and talking to and speaking to the ballet dancers at ABT, and I work with actors at the Theater Development Fund from Taunton Middle High School, and I still mentor some of my old students from Harlem. And I found myself saying the same things over and over again. I thought, you know what? I should be saying this to a bigger audience. I should be saying these universal truths to as many people who will listen. And the trigger, I think, was watching the news with this crazy politics going, really? So rather than complain, I said, let me put my own news out there. Rather than being victimized by this hellish negativity that's everywhere, I'm going to put positivity out there. I'm going to say, here is a way to look at the world that it's either the glass is half empty or half full. I choose half full, and I choose love and light, and I want you to do the same thing. And if you're interested, the way to do this is through self-reflection. Take a look at yourself and forgive yourself for being human, and love yourself, whatever you find. And in doing so, you'll find yourself loving others. I just think we got to do it. And so I was called to do it and thought, rather than just say it to a room full of ballet dancers, I'm going to say it to the world, whoever's listening.
I love that you're doing this. It's such a great series. It's a breath of fresh air. You're right in the middle of
Thank you. I
difficulty.
appreciate that.
Yeah. So any listeners, definitely check it out. It's called In Reflection. I'll put a link to it in the show notes as well, so that people can find it easily. And you know, I've taken up so much of your time. You've been so generous. We do have, one last session on the podcast called Petite Allegro, where I just kind of do rapid fire questions, if you're okay with that.
Okay. Okay, sure. That's cute. Love that.
Well, I'm curious, whether you're dancing or teaching or choreographing, what's the one thing that you have to have in your ballet bag that you can't live without?
Musicality.
Yeah, that's a great answer, because normally people say physical objects, but musicality, that's so important. That's the one thing you really need.
And also vision. You've got to be, the narrative, we're storytellers, right? Having a sense of the arc of a story and how to put yourself in a character that's authentically you so that the audience sees themselves in you. I think that musicality and the authenticity of real storytelling is a critical piece of any choreographer, director, producer, writer of any kind, particularly ballet.
And then I know that you mentioned you originally studied chemistry before moving into dance. Was there anything from studying chemistry and science that sort of translated to your career?
Problem solving. I loved partnering and seeing the balancing of the foot and all of the mechanics in that. It's the same kind of, how do I get from A to B? Whether it's a chemical equation or it's a laboratory experiment or it's a ballet dancer doing choreography in the room trying to get keep a young lady on balance. I love that. And it's, although it's not a literal comparison, it's the same part. What intrigues me about it is the problem solving.
That's awesome. It's so cool to see how things translate from different,
Yeah.
aspects of your life. And then I always ask anyone who comes on who's performed professionally if you have any funny backstage stories that you can share from your time performing.
Backstage stories. One that I had was we all have these, well, people have these falls. We did this opening number for Judy Jamison. There was a choreography. It was like 2 minutes long, and it opened up most of our shows for a year or so. And I could learn things quickly, so I was often thrown on at the last minute. So the person that had gotten injured or sick or something, I had to put on their costume and jump out there and do their part, which is the opposite of my part. Mm-hmm. So in this choreography, there was a pinwheel where the dancers are swirling around. One line's going backwards, one line's going forward, and Judy Jamison is in the middle doing her Judy Jamison thing. And as the pinwheel swings down stage center, my foot gets caught in my silken pants and I fall right on my butt.
Oh, no.
Down stage center.
Oh, no.
And the pinwheel leaves it behind, and I'm scooting back, trying to, I don't know, I just didn't get up, but I'm scooting back first on my butt across center stage. I can see the crew. There's this in the city center. There was this window back there where you can see the crew, and they're laughing. You can see them laughing. Oh, and I'm thinking, I'm on stage with Judy Jamison, and I'm on my ASS. I've never forgotten that. And as funny as it is, this is recovering from that, having gone the next day and do the same thing, and of course doing it well. I just never forgot that. It's funny and painful, but it's part of resilience. You're going to get through those things. But when I think about falling, yeah, I did it right down stage, literally on my booty.
And you got back up and you did the show again the next day.
I got back up and I did it. Of course, Judy forgave me, but it's Judy Jamison. right? It was all about her, and I made it about me, and so
No.
embarrassing to this day. I still go, darn it! If I just pulled the silken pants up a little bit higher, had a tighter elastic, I wouldn't have fallen. But anyway, I did. There you go.
You
I got
adapted and you
it.
overcame. So.
Yeah. That's
No,
it.
that's great. And then I know that you mentioned, you were one of the final dancers picked by Alvin Ailey to join the company before he passed. Was there any advice that he shared with you, or anything that you learned from working with him before he died that you can share?
Yeah, the most important thing about your dancing is you, right? There's a moment where he was waiting to kind of decide whether he was going to pick me. And there was a rehearsal where he said, give me your biggest arabesque. So I do arabesque, step, 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 arabesque, step. And I was whacking that leg. My leg went really, really high in arabesque. And it was going so, so high. And he goes, do it again, do it again. And he kind of stormed out. It turns out it wasn't the height of the leg. Of course, he wanted it high. He wanted my leg to go up as only I could do it. He wanted to see my arabesque, the way it looked on my body, and have me own that arabesque. I never forgot that the most important thing about what you do on stage is what you bring to it. So it's not about having someone else's perfect arabesque. It's about having your arabesque. And that followed me for the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's such great advice. That's such a great lesson. Thanks for sharing that. And then the last question I always ask everyone who comes on the podcast is, in a perfect world, what would ballet or the dance world look like? Or what would you want it to be?
Ooh. Yeah, ballet would be for everybody. Ballet would look like the world looks. It'd be multinational. The dancers' ethnicity, their beliefs, their cultures, reflect the world and America. The repertoire would be telling stories from all over the world, not just from one perspective. The costumes, lights, and music would all be representative of the whole world. And so, no matter who you were, when you went into the audience, you saw yourself on stage somewhere. That would be what I hope one day. And we'll get there. We'll get there. But we're not there yet. So we've got some work to do. But yeah, that's what I want for the world, for ballet.
That's my hope too. And yeah, you're right. There's still some work to do, but I love the work that you're doing with ABT and, in your own personal career to make those changes. And it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. I've learned so much. I could probably
Thank
talk to you for
you.
another hour. I have so many questions.
Appreciate it.
But
Thank you.
where can people find you on social media if they want to connect with you?
Oh, sure. Yeah. All of my social media is at Aubrey Lynch, my name, one word. And on YouTube, it's at the Aubrey Lynch. And I'm lucky that I have my name and my website, aubreyLynch.com.
That's great. Well, I'll link to all of that in the show notes. And thank you again so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for talking. I really appreciate it. It was really, really a lot of fun. I love talking about all this. Really appreciate you, and congrats on all that you do as well.
Are you ready to go out and follow your dreams yet? That's how I felt after this interview. Aubrey is clearly so passionate about what he does, so accomplished, and yet so humble, it's kind of insane. He's also so supportive of ballet being accessible to everyone, and that's reflected in his work and everything that he does. Speaking of reflection, Aubrey has recently launched Aubrey Lynch in Reflection, a weekly YouTube podcast inviting everyone to live in love and light. He talks about mental health, how to be a self-reflective artist, and lots of other important topics for ballet dancers, artists, and human beings. It's a great series. You can check it out on YouTube. I'll link to it in the show notes. I also just have to say that I love the work that American Ballet Theatre is doing to expand access to ballet and inclusion in the art form. Their Wellness and RISE programs are such important pillars of the company, and all of the company's work to increase visibility for BIPOC and female dancers and choreographers is moving ballet forward. If you want to check out any of these initiatives that we talked about in more detail, I'll link to more info in the show notes as well. There are also links to check out Aubrey's website and connect with him on social media. And as always, you can connect with me on social media at eblosfield or send me an email at theadultballetstudio@gmail.com. If you like what you hear, please take a moment to rate and review the Adult Ballet Studio on your platform of choice. And we also have a Patreon linked in the show notes if you want to show us a little extra love, but no pressure. Simply spreading the word is appreciated so much. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Aubrey, and we have another great guest joining the studio to talk even more about mental health and ballet on Tuesday, May 7th, so stay tuned. And in the meantime, happy dancing and see you at the bar.